I want to discuss Kari Lake's lawsuit in Arizona to correct, as she would see it, the fraud in the Arizona gubernatorial election. Now, I think Kari Lake would be the first to admit it's not just in the gubernatorial election, but the focus here is on the gubernatorial election. By the way, notice that the election is being run by her opponent, Katie Hobbs, Secretary of State, who was urged to step down but refused to. So you got a very bizarre situation. You've got Katie Hobbs running the election. You've got all kinds of election problems right on election day. And Kari Lake had specifically instructed her voters, come out and vote on election day. Now, that sort of backfired because with all the problems, particularly in Maricopa County, the largest county, by the way, in Arizona, the Republican vote gets suppressed on election day. Now, the Maricopa people who admit, by the way, that there were all these problems, tabulators that weren't working, people who show up to vote were dispatched, go vote someplace else. Maricopa goes, well, we didn't really, this was unintentional, this was a glitch, this was kind of unfortunate, but no, this was not an organized effort at voter suppression, even though the officials in Maricopa County were very clear. And in some cases, a couple of them even started a pact to defeat people like Kari Lake and MAGA candidates. So their political affinities are known, even though some of them are Republicans. And so this is a very bad situation all the way around. By the way, Kari Lake's lawsuit is filed against Hobbs, against the county recorder, a guy named Stephen Richer, and the county board of supervisors. I want to focus here on one detail in the lawsuit that I think is very telling, and it is the sudden emergence in Maricopa County after Election Day of 25,000 votes. Now, this is kind of significant because the margin between Kari Lake and Katie Hobbs was about 20,000 votes. So think about this. 25,000 votes, more than the margin of victory, pop up after Election Day. Here we go again. And the reason this is significant is that when courts look at these election suits, the first thing they apply is, and I think I mentioned this on the podcast before, the so-called but-for rule. But for this alleged fraud, would the election have come out differently? And Kari Lake goes, yeah, this is more than enough of a margin to throw the result of the election into doubt. And essentially the remedy that Kari Lake is seeking is either declare me the actual winner or have another election, one or the other. Now, this is always an uphill battle. Courts are generally a little reluctant to offer this kind of a remedy. They have done it before. I mentioned the 2018 North Carolina election where not the court, but an election board ordered a new election. So what's happening here is that Maricopa County declared on Election Day, which is November 9, 2022, that it had scanned 275,000 ballots. And these are the mail-in votes. So this was the given number of mail-in votes. And Arizona law, by the way, requires you to specify what are the number of mail-in votes by Election Day. And then, says Kari Lake, the next day, Maricopa County election official Celia Neighbor contacts the county's contractor, a group called Runbeck Election Services, and tells the company it has scanned 298,000 ballots. So 23,000 ballots are added to the Maricopa total after Election Day. And conveniently, this happens to be kind of the number of votes that Katie Hobbs needs in order to have this margin over Kari Lake. And this is it's unexplained. It's not as if Maricopa County goes, well, you know what? They were in a bag and the bag was sitting over here and we just didn't see it. No, without explanation, these votes are added. Now, the Kari Lake lawsuit has a lot more in it. It talks about the printer and tabulator issues, which affected, by the way, 131 polling locations, 59% of the total. And Kari Lake goes, look, it's a fact that Republicans voted 3-1 over Democrats on Election Day. So she goes, if you have any kind of a problem that is serious and that only kicks in on one day, on election day, when Republicans are outvoting Democrats 3-1, this is clear voter suppression of the Republican vote. How else can you look at it? And again, we're talking about a close race. Here's Kari Lake talking on Charlie Kirk's podcast. 75% of people voting on election day were voting for me, and then you basically shut down or make it impossible to vote or very difficult to vote at roughly 60% of the locations to vote, and you're going to cut into our lead. This is the disenfranchisement of voters in Arizona. So we'll be watching carefully to see what happens with all this. By the way, I haven't talked about affidavits from whistleblowers who talk about the way in which signature matching wasn't properly done. There's a lot in this lawsuit. And I just hope that we get a substantive hearing on the merits instead of just some kind of procedural. The court really doesn't want to get into any of this. And because we need to restore voter confidence in the integrity of the process.